Just clicked go live on YouTube, and I'm going to start the recording on my end. Record on this computer. This is Male Entrepreneur Podcast with Mike. Is it Mike Mooney?
Mooney, that's right.
Awesome. Yeah. It's like money, but with an extra O.
A lot of money. Mooney. Yes.
Nice. Awesome. All right. And we are live in 3, 2. All right. Welcome back to Male Entrepreneur, the podcast for men who win. And we've got a couple of men who are winners on this episode today. I'm going to hand it over to you, Purdeep, and I'm going to play a fly on the wall for the majority of this episode.
Hey, thanks. Thanks, Nathan. I appreciate that. Yeah. So today's episode, very timely, very important. Super excited to have this cool guest with us today, because the time that we're facing right now when it comes to business, with the economy, the recession, and this whole darn virus, I think it's super imperative that we talk about the impact of reputation and what that means for your business and your brand. And so today we have Mike Mooney with us today. He's an author, he's a speaker, he's a coach, and he's also spent 25 years in motorsports, which I'm super interested in. So Mike, thanks for joining us.
Right on, Purdeep. Thank you so much, man, for having me on. Nathan, glad to see you as well. Thanks so much, guys. Really just thrilled to be here and to be interacting with people during this this time of crisis. But to get back to your question on my background and where I've been, I spent the last 25 years in motorsports, a very high performing, high pressure, and at times highly uncertain industry. In areas of brand strategy and crisis management, reputation management, and had a chance to do that for brands like Mercedes-Benz, Tylenol, Sunoco, Sprint, Walmart, and sports ranging from NASCAR to IndyCar to Formula One. So it was a fun ride, but I'll tell you, one of the challenges with that is you're at a lot of races, and I was at a point in my career when going to 25 races a year, weekend after weekend, was kind of grinding me a little bit, and I had written a book on reputation management for individuals and leaders and entrepreneurs, and took that to become a centerpiece when I decided to make the pivot out of motorsports into, the world in which I'm working now, and speaking and coaching and continuing to write.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I might actually ask you some more questions about motorsports, because I've always been super interested. And I know in the US, I'm from Canada, but in the US, obviously NASCAR, I understand, is like the biggest thing, right? That's where, people flock to. It's like how many 100,000? Is it 100,000 plus people?
Yeah, it is. It's wild. I mean, obviously these days, not so much because we're not allowed to be racing. But average attendance is anywhere over 100,000, 125,000 an event. So it is significant in terms of the sheer numbers of people that are going to events.
Yeah, and just thinking, putting my marketing hat on, my branding hat on, there's a lot of nuances when it comes to that, right? You have your branding outside of that, then you have 100,000 people in those events. So tell me, how are you, how did you make that pivot from that world to what you're doing right now?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it was something that the work I'm doing now is really an extension of the work I had been doing for drivers and athletes and executives and brands over the years, which was helping them come to life in a way that was credible, authentic, and relevant to the audience they were trying to reach. And basically, with that work, and then the work I had done in crisis management and reputation work, ranging from driver deaths to fan injuries to sponsor bankruptcies to drivers being knuckleheads and saying just ridiculous things on live TV or social media, really it was coming to a place of saying, how can I do this for people where it can matter most in this world of hyperconnectivity and transparency? And we're seeing leaders and individuals where their legacies are being tarnished, their careers are ending, their families are being blown apart. And I really felt that it was the right time, quite honestly, to take what I had learned in this world of motorsports and apply it over here to where it could be of really, really significant use and impact to to people, man. So that was really why I chose to do that, because I felt that I had the experience behind me, and the stories and the time in the seat to be able to really help people build their own brands, right? Stand up, stand out, and be distinctive, but then also help them be proactive in how they were looking at managing reputation. And that's a
Yeah.
big distinction.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. If we take a look at it, and as you were saying that, a couple of names just popped up in my head, celebrities like Bill Crosby and Harvey Weinstein and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And I'm saying,
Yeah.
when you said, their legacies are basically being wiped out, you're
Yeah.
absolutely, correct. How would it feel to be a star for your entire life, and all of a sudden it's taken away from you? Obviously, some of them are for legitimate reasons.
Some of them well earned, yes.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
yeah, without a doubt. And that was a thing to me, Pradeep, as I was thinking about this pivot, was this question kept coming to my mind as I kind of geek out on crisis, and don't ask me why, but I like to dissect, how did we get here and what could we have done differently? And this question kept popping up in my head, man, and I'm going to ask this of you. How much is your reputation worth? That kept coming back to mind of like saying, my gosh, these people are doing things. How much is their reputation worth? If you had to put in the dollars, man, let me ask you now, in dollars, how much is your reputation worth? Can you do that?
It's tough to put a number to it, right? It's priceless.
Yeah.
It's something, especially for guys, their
Right.
reputation is everything. It's a status, right? And that's social.
Yeah.
That's how we're built as human beings, right? That's how our brain is designed. So I know guys that would do crazy things just to keep their reputation, intact the way it is. So really good question. I think it's a valid question for everybody, that they should be asking themselves.
And that's the thing. And you're spot on. When I ask, groups that when I'm doing keynotes or talking with companies, then I ask that question, I'll generally get three answers, right? The first one, and from like the financial group, they'll be like, it's 10x my current salary. So they're trying to, put the monetize and the future opportunity tied to the reputation, which I get, but I still think they're undervaluing it. I get the it's priceless answer, which you just said, and clearly it is. And the third answer I get, which I love, is people saying, I never really thought of it that way. And that's the root of it, man. The root of it is we rarely ever consider the value of our reputations until after we've paid the price. And it's that mindset shift of looking at reputation management of a what now, a reactive mindset and approach, versus the what if, which is proactive, which is thinking through the scenarios, which is thinking before you act, which is being aligned with your values authentically and who you are, right? And bringing that out in a consistent and deliberate way. So that's really what fired me up and got me going about, okay, look, I've done this in motorsports. Now I want to be out here doing this with men, women, leaders, entrepreneurs, people, because in today's world, and this, we've got goodness, and the examples you even shared, that our reputations have never been more valuable, yet vulnerable and fragile, because of how easy it is for people to use these devices, right? We're all citizen journalists now. We're all able to capture and share it in instantaneous ways, man, that can have long-term impact to us as individuals. So how can we get ahead of that and be proactive and be mindful of the things that we're doing on a daily basis, especially as men?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Nathan, I know you got a question there.
I do. So I'm a marketer, and recently one of the people in my industry, their entire business collapsed. You mentioned 10x, and anybody who knows marketing and is familiar with the word 10x, they probably know who I'm talking about. But this guy had built a giant business, and right at the beginning of this ended up having to file bankruptcy, close his whole business down, lay off his entire crew, and took a huge hit to his reputation, because people were like, well, you're selling something that you actually don't have built for yourself. You're selling this dream of luxury and all of this, and now we're seeing it was all a house of cards for you.
Yeah.
I also have seen a lot of people through the stress of this start lashing out, anger, fear, um, treating their fans on social media like crap, treating anybody who disagrees with them about any nuance of the situation like crap. A lot of people, I think, right now, especially under the stress, are doing a lot of damage to their reputations, probably myself included. I don't feel like I'm exempt from this. Um, I wanted to get your thoughts on, in times of high stress where people do damage to their reputation, what are some things? I guess the proactive thing is how do we stop doing the damage? But I know that there's also been people like Mike Tyson who, through part of his career, was completely demonized and then came back and kind of had a comeback. So if you're somebody who's made some of the mistakes during this high stress time, thoughts on kind of regaining some reputation.
So
Yeah.
can I just jump in there, Mike, before you give us your awesome feedback here? Is Nathan, I'm still confused on that because I know who you're talking about from that 10x thing. I heard recently that it was some kind of hoax. And so do you know, was it a hoax? Like this person actually did it purposefully?
I I have kind of an NDA. I'm not really allowed to speak. I'm not even allowed to say the person's name, so I can't really speak on that very much.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
We can talk about it some other time.
It's the bob and the weave.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Mike, over to you.
Oh man. So I have a couple of thoughts on that. One is related to the missteps that some people are taking today. Look, here's the reality, and I do believe that in this time, again, of hyperconnectivity and people rushing to judgment, that, you know what we've lost, quite honestly, in my opinion, is the space for some grace, quite honestly. That, look, we are human. We're not going to be our best all the time. It's just reality, folks, you know. And if someone's having an off day, give them a little bit of grace, give them a little bit of space. We're all under an extreme amount of stress. Now, I say that as long as that person has a track record. This gets back to the reputation, right? Where people can say, whoa, that's not the Nathan I know, lashing out. Something must be going on, right? Now, that's the point of having a good track record behind you. So people will give you that space and grace. So a strategy for that, and that I often talk about, is the idea of visualizing your own instant replay. Okay, so what I mean by that is, so we talk about sports for a second. Nathan, what does the instant replay do for you when you watch it during a sports event?
Gives you more clarity on what just happened.
Yeah, yeah, and not just what just happened from your perspective, but what else does it show you? Different points of view. And suddenly what you thought dead on, and you're yelling at your buddy saying, no man, BS, you're wrong, you realize, oh, okay, now I see it differently. Okay, so what if we took that strategy and applied it to the decisions and the actions that we're taking right now? Or before we do something or say something, especially in social media where you can't really take it back. Even if you delete something, you can't take it back. What if you took that approach and said, okay, now how is this going to look? Let me take a moment. How will this look from my work perspective, my friend's perspective, my faith perspective, right? You suddenly start looking at the different perspectives in your life to see, how is this going to look, not just from where I'm sitting right now and sitting in emotion, but how is this going to look from all the other aspects and facets of my life? And I guarantee you put that into play, and it doesn't take very long to do. You often think twice about how you're going to react in a situation. So that would be one thing that I would share with you in the audience, to think about your instant replay. The other part that I really believe is causing a lot of the stress right now that we're all feeling in different ways is the lack of control that we're feeling in our lives, that we're sitting and waiting. There's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of unknown. So we typically, and human nature has, where if we don't have control in the areas we're looking for, we try to assert it in other places around us. I am a big believer that there are truly only three things that we can control in our lives. All right. And that's our attitude, our decisions, and our behaviors. It all starts in here. We often try to control things from the outside in, very reactive, versus starting with our attitude, our decisions, and behaviors from the inside out. How are we meeting the challenges? How are we meeting the stress from here first, outward? So I would offer that up to your audience to say, look, you can't control all the things that are happening. So focus on those three things: attitude, decisions, behaviors. That's all you can do.
Yeah, really good points there. So where are you, obviously with everything that's going on with the virus, the economic downturn that we've had,
Yeah.
where are you seeing, this is kind of a loaded question and it's pretty broad, the biggest hits in reputation damage right now?
Yeah. Right now, what I'm seeing, and I've been talking to a lot of groups about this, and company owners and executives, individuals, is many folks who were messing it up right now or having the missteps still think that the currency today is money. They're still thinking transactionally. And I understand that a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs are focused on, how do I keep this machine going? I've got to keep my business going. I get that. And I'm not downplaying the pressure, the stress, the anxiety, the all those things, the ulcers, all those things, sleepless nights. But right now, in the midst of this crisis, we have to recognize that the currency is trust and relationships, hands down. You've got to be doubling down and investing in building trust and nurturing relationships. That will pay the financial dividends on the other side. But if you're still focused on transactions and money, man, you're tone deaf. You're absolutely tone deaf right now.
Yeah, Nathan and I were actually just talking about that because so many people are feeling like they're in deer in headlights, right? They're not doing anything, and so it's important that business owners, that people that are in a position of influence, stand up as leaders and stand up
Exactly.
and show that, because people need that clarity, people need that confidence that they're looking for, and as you mentioned, they don't have that control that they normally would, but they
Yeah.
need it to feel like there's some light at the end of the tunnel, like there's that people are going to be able to get through this. I'm personally seeing a lack of that in so many different avenues, from all the way from politics to
Mhm.
business leadership to even at the family level, for example. And so we
Yeah.
need to, step up and say, okay, you're absolutely right. It all comes down to trust and,
Yeah.
authenticity and relationships. So this is definitely going to challenge relationships to a completely different level, not only from
Oh, yeah.
business to consumer, business to business, but even within relationships, marriages. Nathan and I had an interesting conversation. My kids are getting antsy, and we've been butting heads a little bit over the last couple of days.
Yeah.
So it is testing the emotional strength of so many people. So
I agree. Listen, man, I'll tell you right now, this morning at 8:15, I was apologizing to our 16-year-old daughter last night because of just I was not being my best self when she was asking me to do something, at the end of the day. And it was a pretty stressful time. The task was simple, but I wasn't, I was really kind of an ass, and listen, you're right. The stress pops up in places where you don't expect it to. But I think there's also, it's important then to recognize, right, and own when you've messed up, and ask for that forgiveness too, So
yeah, I
just
think what
sharing that,
I think that point that you made on grace is kind of hits home. And I just had a example yesterday. I was sitting with my son, and at the school actually sent him this really cool exercise to do at the end of the day. It's quarantine focused, but one of the questions
Okay.
was, how do you feel? And it just had an empty face, and the kids are supposed to draw their face, and my son just had a straight mouth and two eyes, and I said,
Hmm.
how do you feel? Like, I never knew you felt. He's like, I feel like that, Dada. I'm like, man, I would have
Man,
no clue,
God, that gets you. Yeah,
because he
yeah,
seemed normal, a 6-year-old kid jumping around doing
yeah,
his thing. But yeah,
yeah,
so many people are feeling that way. So we're closing up on the episode here, Mike. What's your,
yeah.
again, loaded question. What's your one piece of advice for the people listening out there? the best thing that they can do right now, whether it's reputation or
Wow.
leadership or whatever it is
Hmm.
that you
Hmm.
think can help them through this time?
So I would say this. Gosh, there were a lot of things, man. I wish we had more time. Uh, this is a very emotionally charged period in our world, hands down. Emotions aren't good, they aren't bad. They just are. The challenge though is how long do we let the emotion sit with us? And then what does that do to us? So my if I were to say one thing is that listen, own the emotion, feel the emotion, but don't sit in the emotion. Work toward action. If you're dealing with an issue that's causing emotional stress or strain, figure out what the action steps can be. It could be one step, it could be two steps, right? But take it from the inside where the emotion sits and move it to action externally that actually releases that emotion that is bogging you down or really bothering you. So right now it's really about acting. Understand it, embrace it, but act. Don't sit in it, because that's only going to continue just to weigh you down, when we have a lack of outlets that we normally have to release these things, you know? So again, move to act. And that could be taking a walk, it could be talking to your spouse, it could be having a Zoom happy hour with your buddies. Just act. Please don't sit in and continue to isolate yourself because of the emotions that you're feeling right now.
Yeah, that's awesome advice because you're so true. So many people are just sitting in it, they're not doing anything. So thank you
Yeah.
for that. So, where can listeners go to find out more about you and the work that you do?
Right on. And thank you for that. I appreciate it, Purdeep. They can go to mikemooney.com. Mike Mooney, MOONEY.com. You'll find out more about what I'm doing there. You can hit me up on LinkedIn, on Instagram as well as Mike_Mooney. Would love to connect. And again, man, this is about investing in relationships and people and each other. So the more we can do that, I believe the better we're going to be in this and through this. So I appreciate your time, and Nathan, thank you, man, for being part of it too. This has been great.
Absolutely. Thank you both for a fascinating conversation. MikeMooney.com to check out more of Mike's work. If you want to check out more episodes of the podcast, mailpodcast.com and YouTubeformen.com. And until next time, we will catch y'all later.
Take care.
All right. Stop the live stream.